We've prepared a list of the top 10 most dangerous teenagers sentenced to life or lengthy prison terms. It's important to note that not all of them committed crimes with malicious intent. Our goal is not just to tell you about criminals but also to shed light on those who made grave mistakes and faced the harshest punishments of their lives as a result. 10. Gregory Brooks and John Thompson, an elderly couple from Northwest Indiana, fell victim to a heinous attack, and their bodies were discarded in the woods in 2009. This horrific crime was committed by Gregory Brooks Jr. and Rio John Thompson. The bodies of Ruby and Milton McClendon were discovered in October 2009, approximately 2 miles from their home in a forest preserve where they were robbed. Their home had also been burglarized. 19-year-old Gregory Brooks Jr. was sentenced to 120 years in prison. Gregory Brooks Sr., the father of the defendant, admitted he tried to keep his son away from street gangs but ultimately failed. The other suspect, Rio John Thompson, was only 17 years old. Prosecutors argued that Brooks and Thompson attacked the McClendons, stealing $50 in cash, a rifle, jewelry, and other items. They then locked the couple in a closet, forced them into the trunk of a car, drove them to the woods, and took their lives. It's horrifying to realize that such a senseless crime was motivated by greed. 9. The boy received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for his playmate. John Silva, 15-year-old John Silva, who showed no reaction to his sentencing, was tried as an adult and convicted of first-degree murder. The body of his victim, 12-year-old Jerry Lee Ellison Jr., was found bound at the bottom of a trash container. A note found near the body contained instructions such as strip to underwear, tie hands, gag mouth, and close eyes. Investigators claimed the note was written by Silva, who was Jerry's neighbor and classmate. On March 16, 2001, the trial took place. The 15-year-old sat calmly in handcuffs as the Putnam County judge handed down the sentence. The sentencing was swift, lasting less than an hour, with brief statements from Jerry's family and friends asking the judge to make an example of Silva by sentencing him to life in prison. Silva was too young to qualify for the death penalty. We'll leave this tragic story without further comment. 8. Heather Opel, a 14-year-old girl, Heather Opel, was sentenced to 22 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Her mother, Barbara Opel, lived with 64-year-old Jerry Dwayne Heyman and his 89-year-old mother, whom Barbara cared for. To steal $40,000, Barbara paid 5 teenagers, including her 13-year-old daughter, to kill Heyman. Jerry Heyman died in confusion and terror. He was ambushed by the group of teens as he entered his Everett, Washington, home on the evening of April 13, 2001. One teenager struck him on the head with an aluminum bat, and he collapsed to the floor. While the first attacker continued to deliver devastating blows with the large bat, 2 others swung miniature bats, souvenirs from the Seattle Mariners, at Heyman. The attack turned into a frenzied nightmare when 2 teenage girls joined in with a 10-inch kitchen knife, taking turns stabbing Heyman until he died. The teens then mopped the floor, loaded the body into a car, and dumped the remains by the roadside on the outskirts of Everett. This chilling story, with so many involved, seems almost unbelievable. 7. Kervasier Sims was only 15 years old when he fatally shot 2 other teenagers in 2015. Sims was sentenced to a prison term ranging from 70 to 120 years. He pleaded guilty to the deaths of James Starr and Brandon Phelps. In December 2015, Sims had gone to purchase a firearm. As he left the store, he believed he was about to be robbed, pulled out the weapon, and shot both teens. At best, Sims will have to serve 35 years before he is eligible for parole. His lawyer argued that the boy panicked after realizing one of the teenagers was armed. In court, Sims expressed regret over what happened. His attorney, James Martin Davis, requested a minimum sentence of 20 years, arguing that Sims had no intent to kill. He noted that Sims had experienced difficulties since age 12, growing up without a father and finding role models on the streets. 6. Brenda Spencer 16-year-old Brenda Spencer, who lived across the street from a school, was convicted of a deadly shooting. On January 29, 1979, Brenda Spencer killed 2 people and injured 9 others when she opened fire on Grover Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego from her house. The victims were the school's principal, Burton Ragg, and custodian Mike Sakar. 8 students and a police officer were wounded. Spencer pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon, receiving a life sentence. When asked why she did it, she famously replied, "I don't like Mondays." She also told negotiators, "It was a lot of fun seeing kids shot." Such an act is beyond comprehension, but at least justice was served in this case. 5. Lionel Tate. Lionel Alexander Tate is known as the youngest American citizen ever sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He was convicted for the brutal murder of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick. In January 2001, in Broward County, Florida, Lionel Tate, then only 14 years old, committed the crime. Tiffany was at his house as a guest, and Lionel's mother, Kathleen, was tasked with supervising her. The children were playing loudly, disturbing Kathleen as she prepared dinner, so she sent them to another room to play. Approximately 45 minutes later, Lionel came to his mother and told her that Tiffany was not breathing. He claimed that they had been wrestling, and during the play, he grabbed her head, causing it to strike a table. Tragic incidents like this make parents wish they could keep their children under constant supervision. However, evidence revealed that Lionel's actions were far more severe. Tiffany's liver had been lacerated due to a tremendous blow, and she had significant bruising on her legs, feet, and neck. The nature of her injuries was consistent with those seen in car accident victims or falls from great heights. The judge sentenced Lionel Tate to life imprisonment. The prosecution argued that Lionel's actions were not the playful mischief of a child but cold, calculated, and brutally inhumane. Despite this, the harsh punishment sparked widespread criticism of Florida's justice system, particularly its treatment of juvenile offenders. In 2004, an appeals court overturned Tate's conviction, citing that his mental competency had not been evaluated before the trial. This case raised significant questions about the balance between justice and rehabilitation for young offenders. 4. George Stinney Jr. George Stinney Jr. holds the tragic distinction of being the youngest person in modern U.S. history to be executed. In March 1944, at just 14 years old, George was accused of murdering 2 young girls, Betty June Binnicker 11 and Mary Emma Thames 7, in Alcolu, South Carolina. George's trial lasted only a single day, and the all-white jury deliberated for just 10 minutes before finding him guilty. He was sentenced to death by electrocution. Despite his family's desperate appeals to Governor Olin D. Johnston for clemency, arguing that George was just a boy, the case was not reconsidered. George was executed in June 1944, becoming the youngest person to face capital punishment in the 20th century. Decades later, in 2014, a South Carolina court reviewed the case and concluded that George had not been given a fair trial. His conviction was overturned, acknowledging that a grave miscarriage of justice had occurred. Unfortunately, this vindication came too late to save his life. 3. Joshua Phillips. Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips was only 14 years old when he committed an unthinkable crime that shocked the nation. In November 1998, he took the life of his 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton. According to his explanation, the tragedy began as an accident. Joshua stated that while they were playing together, he accidentally hit Maddie with a baseball, causing her to cry loudly. Fearing punishment from his abusive father, Joshua panicked. He dragged Maddie into his house and struck her with a baseball bat in an attempt to quiet her cries. What followed was even more horrifying. He hid her lifeless body under his bed. Joshua's crime came to light when his mother discovered Maddie's body while cleaning his room. He was arrested and tried as an adult, with the trial moved from Duval County to Polk County due to extensive media coverage. During the trial, Joshua did not testify in his defense, and his lawyer presented no witnesses. The jury took just 2 hours to convict him. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, as he was too young to be eligible for the death penalty. The case remains a chilling reminder of how deeply fear and panic can lead to irreversible actions. 2. Antonio Barbeau. Antonio Barbeau was only 14 years old when he and a friend committed a gruesome crime against his 78-year-old grandmother. Antonio used a hatchet to attack her while his friend, Nathan Pop, assisted in the act. The tragic incident began innocently, with the grandmother inviting the boys into her home. However, as she turned her back to call Antonio's mother, Antonio struck her on the head with the hatchet. Overcome with nausea, he retreated to the bathroom, only to return and find Nathan bludgeoning her with a hammer. After realizing she was dead, the boys panicked and attempted to drag her body into her car to dispose of it. However, their efforts failed, and they left her lifeless body in the garage. Before fleeing, they stole valuables, including cash and jewelry. Antonio later expressed regret, attempting to read a statement of apology in court but breaking into tears before finishing. His lawyer had to read the statement on his behalf. In 2013, Antonio was sentenced to at least 36 years in prison, with the possibility of parole afterward. His defense argued that a traumatic brain injury he suffered in 2009 contributed to his cognitive issues, influencing his poor decisions. 1. Nicolas Cruz. Nicolas Cruz's name is forever linked to one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. On February 14, 2018, he carried out a massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing 17 people and injuring 17 others. Cruz, a former student of the school, had a history of behavioral issues and had been expelled. On the tragic day, he arrived at the school armed with a semi-automatic rifle and activated the fire alarm to draw students and staff out of their classrooms. As they evacuated, he opened fire indiscriminately. Wearing a gas mask and carrying smoke grenades, Cruz executed his attack with cold precision. After the shooting, he abandoned his weapon on the third floor and blended in with fleeing students to escape. He was arrested later that day in Coral Springs. In October 2021, Nicolas Cruz pleaded guilty to 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This tragedy has left an indelible mark on countless lives, fueling ongoing debates about gun control and school safety in America.